We played Blades of Fire early, 60 hours of the game so far, thanks to 505 Games, and we have some crazy first impressions of this game. And even after 60 hours of playing, we still haven't explored everything that there is to touch in the Blades of Fire world. I'm going to go over the story, the cool gameplay mechanics that we haven't seen from any other game before, how good the combat is, how fun it is, and overall why this could be one of the greatest games this year. Keep in mind, this is my completely honest, unsponsored opinion of the game. Let's go. So first, the story of Blades of Fire is extremely interesting. Blades of Fire is an action-adventure game that feels like an RPG mixed with Souls-like elements, where long ago a race of giants called the Foragers actually ruled the world and bestowed the knowledge of steel upon humanity through their weapon crafting. Queen Nerea, who now runs these lands, after rising to power, then casts a spell that actually turns steel into stone, rendering most of the weapons useless against her forces in her attempt to take over. He actually plays the main character Aaron, who is a warrior that's actually gifted with a sacred hammer, allowing him to forge weapons from the divine metal as he seeks to assassinate the queen and restore order to all the lands. Now, the story progression in and of itself and the overall story is really sound and really actually good and nice to watch. In our opinion, even better to play through. Now, some of the gameplay for Blades of Fire, again, is very interesting. It follows an open / kind of linear world like most Souls-like games, where essentially you go into an area, but you have multiple different areas within that area that you can explore before progressing. Now again, these maps are actually pretty huge, and they let you adventure in some pretty large areas with so many different areas off to the sides that actually kind of make your head spin. Not only that, there are tons of secrets and things that you can find around every turn, every nook, every cranny in the game, which just gives us a lot to overall explore. But again, that means also a lot of things to find. The gameplay is centered around difficult Souls-like combat, which we can say through playing is actually pretty difficult even when testing on the easiest difficulties, with a bunch of Souls-like mechanics like parrying, dodging, blocking, but also some unique mechanics thrown in that a bunch of games don't have. And one of those things is an entire system based around swing direction and weapon damage types. Of these two, you need to pay attention because some enemies are actually resistant to different kinds of different types of these combat. For instance, the swing direction, depending on what button you press, you actually swing at a different part of the enemy, whether that be the head, lower torso, the left or the right side. And some enemies can have armor or different things on multiple parts of their body, or different stances that actually change during combat, meaning you need to target those weak points in order to actually hit them and do damage. So that's one of the unique things in combat, just one of the 10-20 factors that you have to actually factor in. And you're actually able to carry multiple weapon types, and you actually have to use the right one, or one that works for the right battles, to actually deal damage or fight a lot of enemies. But you actually need to craft your own weapons also, which is where the forge comes in. But again, picking the right weapon and all these different gameplay mechanics play into how your combat is, which makes most fights a pretty unique experience and honestly really fun. So your job is not only to find the queen, but to forge your own weapons and engage in tons of different combat styles that you're going to see when you're playing through the game. Now, as you adventure through the world, you'll find different pieces and weapon components that you will literally need to craft your own amazing weapons. Literally craft them by hand. This means that you'll have to craft, repair, customize, and build out your own unique weapons to fight with, leaving tons of room for experimenting and making weapons that are like really yours and the ones that you made. Keep in mind, you can actually name your weapons almost like they're your child, which is pretty cool. This is one of the cool parts of the game that I find sets it apart from many others. Again, the combat and gameplay is very difficult, and where some parts is simple, other parts are fairly complex and actually require you to think in scenarios, giving you a decent bit of challenge, which in my opinion, I personally like for games when I have to think and actually work through different situations. Not only that, but finding your way throughout the world and going to the next areas isn't so super simple either. Sometimes you need to find different puzzles or different mechanics or ways to advance to the next area, some of which take a decent bit of looking around and trying to figure out how to really get there. So the game may seem straightforward, but again, I would say it's a pretty challenging game overall. Again, the maps may not look that huge in Blades of Fire, but trust me, as you go through them, it takes a while to explore them, but they're packed with tons and tons of goodies, which makes just playing the whole game in general very good. As you advance, again, you unlock more weaponry, more upgrades, a lot of hidden upgrades for your character while you're trying to survive and move from area to area, and a bunch of friendly NPCs and faces that you're actually going to meet along the way. Now, the combat itself is actually very fun and engaging and pretty unique. So not only does this play similar to a Souls-like in terms of difficulty and combat, but with the game being pretty challenging at even the easiest of difficulties, there's some unique features 505 Games has implemented to make it stand out. Firstly, you have the swing direction mechanics that I mentioned earlier that is super interesting that they've added. And essentially, this means if an enemy has let's say a particular armor in a certain spot, like on their shoulder or on their side, or a particular guard stance that, again, they can switch during battle, you may actually need to swing differently to actually hit them. So if they have armor on their sides, you may need to swing at their head. If something happens in battle where they start guarding their head area, that means you actually need to swing low on them. So there's a lot of judgment that you need to make in the combat itself, which I think keeps it fresh and interesting. Now the options are controller, again, are in order of your swing. For example, Y or triangle aim for the head, while X on PlayStation or A on Xbox would swing low. So enemies' open spots can change during battle, and that's what you should be aiming for efficient damage. Your weapons also have durability in different attack types. So your weapons may have both piercing and cleave attack types, where others just may be blunt weapons. Different enemies have different strengths and weaknesses. It's important to learn them to have the best chance in some of these really difficult fights. Another big part of the game is making sure your weapons don't break. You can actually sharpen them once they start to dull to keep them healthy, but that doesn't save you. Eventually they break no matter what you do, so you need to progressively learn new weapons and upgrade them as you go, while again learning the attack patterns of enemies and their weaknesses as well. The game features a lot of things like many Souls-like, things like parrying, blocking, dodging, and many other insane mechanics for the combat, and actually are also tied to the weapons you build, but all these mechanics and more are important to utilize, and each weapon that you make has tons of different stats on it depending on how you craft it, making it better in certain areas like parrying, versus you could set it up to be better at blocking or have non-existent blocking and parrying and just complete an overall damage. So how you craft your weapon is completely up to you, but it changes your gameplay experience based on how you do it. And the combat when you first start the game, I didn't really know what to think, but by hour 2, it starts to make sense, it starts to click, and honestly, it's really amazing. And again, unbiased opinion, me just playing through the game was very, very fun. Now your forge is ultimately like your home. Yes, it's your circle, it's your home, and it's where you're gonna do all of your weapon crafting and enhancing, allowing you to craft all kinds of weapons as you unlock more and more. Now, not only can you craft your own unique and rare weapons, but you need to gather the best materials for the best upgrades, and that means fighting the best enemies and fighting unique and different kinds of enemies depending on what you need, which means you may need to revisit areas to get materials to craft your weapon you really want, and literally forge your weapons, and I mean forge it by hand. So crafting your weapons can determine how strong your weapon repairability is, so that's very important. It gives you different star ratings for how good your weapon is, depending on how much information you've collected for it, meaning you have a lot of uses out of your weapon before it completely breaks. But also the rare materials and items you select when forging your weapon change drastically how it performs. Will your weapon be amazing? Will it just be subpar? Will it be good at blocking, dodging, etc.? If you have the right materials and combinations, you can make a weapon so powerful it can really do some serious damage. Now, learning to sacrifice some stats for others, in theory, craft your ideal weapon can make you a great weapon combination. And due to enemy weaknesses, you will always need to craft different kinds of weapons and different types, which literally makes you experiment, try different weapon types, all of which are very fun to play with, but it engages us and gets us used to playing with all of them. And I think that just makes the game diverse and, again, more fun and different angles that you can play from to keep the game fresh. Starting off, the Forge may not seem like that much, but as you start to unlock different areas of the game and start to unlock more weaponry and parts, it starts leaving a ton of room for creativity in your actual weapon crafting. Now the exploration, which I want to give a B+, because the map, and I am not understating, looks smaller on the actual map, but is actually huge. And that's because Blades of Fire takes all of the map space and layers it on top of one another to make many side areas like underneath and above explorable, so that way one area can almost have like 2 or 3 areas to explore, which gives you, again, tons of side areas that are explorable and different things that you can find all over the place. Some of which you actually will need to return to later to give you cool things to find after you've unlocked certain things in the game. I kid you not, every single area is jam-packed with content, fights, challenges, and stuff to find, enough that, again, you can easily play for 50-60 hours and not be at the end of the game yet. There's literally so much to do and figure out what things are in the game that exploration in Blades of Fire, again, because the challenge the game offers in terms of difficulty, combined with how rewarding the exploration is of different areas, makes it fun to explore and play, and there's a large world out there, and again, it's jam-packed with content throughout. Now I've given you my honest opinion of some of the systems in the game, a lot of them which I truly like, but here's my brutally honest opinion. Now the ultimate question, is the game fun? Well, ultimately, that's yes. And I've played through the entire thing, and through my entire playthrough, I genuinely, again, unsponsored, unbiased, love this game. And I actually give it an 8.7. I wanted to give it close to a 9, but with Expedition 33 just happening, this isn't up to that par, but it's fairly close in terms of the amount of fun that I had. The game is super fun, and would I spend my hard-earned $60 on it? Absolutely. If you want a fun game to play, this is one of the ones you should go for. And that's so much so that I'm actually going to buy an extra copy and give away to one of you guys that's subscribed. So if you haven't, make sure to subscribe and like the video if you haven't. But after Expedition 33 and the first Berserker Kazan that we played, I didn't know if we would keep getting bangers like this, but we did. This game kept me hooked the entire time I was playing, but all I could think was I want to get home and progress and play a little bit further because, again, it's a great game. That's what games do. When you play them and they're fun, you go away from home, you're thinking about them. So by all means, the graphics look great. There's a ton of things to do in Blades of Fire. The one and only gripe I had was playing on PC. It did seem like there were some spots where my game would skip a bit. And keep in mind, I'm on a pretty good hardware setup. So hopefully it was just for me. And if not, I'm sure they'll push fixes for any possible performance issues or hiccups pretty early on, but for 99.9% of my playthrough, I had an absolute blast with no issues whatsoever. And if you want to pick up a copy, possibly on discount, feel free to check out the link below and you can get yourself a copy. Again, I would have to tell you if I'm sponsored, and I'm not. I just really am recommending the game. But this one is a must play, and we'll have tons of great guides for Blades of Fire coming soon. So subscribe for those that haven't, and thanks 505 Games for hooking us up with an early copy. Guys, go give them praise because they deserve all of it on this one. This is a certified banger.